Thanks for watching this Sunburnt Country Music interview with Sweet Talk. I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, maybe hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. And you could also subscribe to this channel. That would be lovely. Thank you. Sweet Talk are a six-piece Southern boogie band from Melbourne, founded over a bond of late nights, 70s grooves, classic songwriting, and improvised jams. They have become festival favourites, and they have now released their debut album, Switch On, which I have had on high rotation because it's a whole vibe, I find. Soren Walker and Dave Turner are here to talk about it. Hello, Soren. Hello, David.
Hello, Sophie. It is good to be back on Sunburnt Country. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure to talk to you both again because the last time the three of us spoke, I very much enjoyed the conversation. But I'm going to start actually by asking how was the tour with the Red Clay Strays? Because you just had a run of dates around Australia in support of them.
Yes, we did. And where do you start with an experience like that? I mean, as far as bucket lists, dream runs, I think that really had it all to work with a team like that, a band like that to begin with. The level of their musicianship and songwriting and performance chops was quite an eye opener and something for us to aspire to. But probably the larger crew, their whole team, just seeing the way they operate for us, we gleaned so much information and we got a lot of great advice from them. But overall, it was an incredibly fun tour. We really connected with the guys from Red Clay Strays, which was nice. Yeah, so by the end of it, we're all sort of thick as thieves, I'd say.
Yeah, they ended up coming. They came to one of our shows on their off day too. So we squeezed in another show in Fremantle, and they made the time to come to that. And yeah, they're absolute legends. So yeah, we played some big rooms too. You know, we played the Hordern, we played Festival Hall. These are stages the Rolling Stones and the Beatles played. So you know, it felt pretty amazing. And you know what? To be honest, we felt pretty comfortable in those spaces too. So um, I don't know, we were pretty happy with it.
I was about to say, I would think that you do feel comfortable because I would think your sound really works for bigger stages because you have played festivals quite a bit, but also you all know each other well as musicians. You rehearse a lot. You've played
Mm.
together. You know your sound. Like this is a band that really knows its identity. I think its musical identity, and that's
Mm.
exactly the sort of band that should be on a big stage because the audience can just look at you and go, "Well, they've got it. We can relax."
Yeah, the difficult part for us was reducing our set list because some of the nights we played for 30 minutes and others for 45. And we're kind of used to playing an hour and between an hour and 75 minutes these days. So that was the toughest part for us is that because we are such a live band, 30 minutes feels quite short for us. You know, we really started to get the motor running about then. But yeah, it's often we were walking on stage to applause and people in the audience seem to know who we are and who we were. And you know, some of the audience knew the lyrics to the songs and were singing back to us. So yeah, it felt appropriate, you know. And I think the Red Clay Strays guys were just stoked that a band that they liked and that kind of suited their vibe and warmed the crowd up for them. You know, it really really worked.
Yeah. But I think with that kind of support slot, it's not like it just drops out of the sky. You actually
Mm.
have to have established yourselves to an extent and being, as you said, the Red Clay Strays like your music. So for anyone who's curious about how those sorts of things come about, was it a matter of management talking to each other, or was it like a DM exchange that led to it?
Well,
Mm.
we'd sort of been in light contact with them via Instagram messages, and from my understanding, I think they got sort of a handful of Australian bands to listen to,
Mm.
and from that and fortunately we're amongst that handful, and from that they indicated that they'd like to get us, which was meant the world to us when we heard that that's how it all went down. Because you do assume it's sort of a management thing or something like that, but to hear this was personal preference from the band meant a lot to us and gave us a lot of confidence. So my understanding is, yeah, they selected us and somehow that got pushed through. Is that your memory of it, Dave?
Yeah, for sure. I think Live Nation sent them a few bands. They liked us, and at one stage they did a meet and greet over in New York. They do meet and greets before shows, and so they before they'd even fully locked us in, they were talking about us with people, and so American-based promoters started reaching out at that point because they'd heard about us from Red Clay Strait. So they were kind of fans once Live Nation put us in touch, and thankfully it all worked out. And by the end of the tour, proudly they were wearing our t-shirts on stage. at multiple shows, and they were wearing our caps. And actually, they just played CMAs over in the States,
Right.
and they played the stadium in Tennessee, and Zach wore our cap in front of something like 70,000 people, which is pretty cool.
We're saying it's the best $16 we've ever spent on marketing.
Yeah.
Cost
Um,
price for the hat, you know?
yeah, I would absolutely think so. Well, that is fantastic to hear. And I'm also just thinking about that side gig you played in Fremantle, because even that it can sound like, oh yes, we just sort of played this gig, but of course you have to know which venue is right for you, and then contact them and make sure there's a night free. So, did you enjoy the Fremantle experience? Do you think there's a good live music scene there based on what you?
Oh yeah. I mean, the honky tonk place. Was it called the honky tonk? Just honky tonk? So
Honky
what was it
Tonk
called?
Frio. Honky Tonk
Yeah.
Frio, our new favorite bar.
Right.
So cool. Yeah, they were great. So that was sort of put together by our booking agent, because we got the Red Clay Strays run, and then our booking agent put together some extra side shows for us just to fill in the gaps. That was a great show, but it's amazing. The night prior we played to 3,500 people, and then we're on stage in front of 150.
Yeah.
So like it swings and roundabouts, and they're both great shows, and we love playing the small ones too. But it's an amazing situation when you're going from like 3,500 to 150 back up to 4,500 in a 3-day sort of stint. But yeah, Frio feels great. The everyone who works at that venue, really, really passionate venue owners, passionate music fans. I believe that they're looking at expanding upstairs and opening up a larger sort of mid-sized venue upstairs. So I signed a petition the other day in support of that to help them out there. Yeah, just really, Perth is great. We love WA.
And that Honky Tonk show was actually the night of our album release. So they treated us, it was a special night for us, and they treated us in a really nice way, I guess. So it was a good place to be able to celebrate that.
Mm.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question, Soren, which is about the album. So the album is as said at the top, is a vibe. It is a very cool, entrancing vibe, because often when I'm listening, I'm trying to think of words to describe what I'm listening to, because I don't want to get technical about it. And I was just thinking, this is like, there's just something about it that's really not necessarily hypnotic, because you feel very present in it when you're listening to it. So I think entrancing was the word I came upon. So when you create the album, or any set of songs, I guess, do you set out to create an experience, or is it more just what happens in the studio as you go?
I think, we sort of touched on, we've been doing a album story series on Instagram recently, and I think we sort of touched on the idea of how we approached going into the studio, and part of that was looking at the sort of what we had to take in there, taking stock of that, and then thinking about what perhaps vibes or feelings or emotions we wanted to include on the album after taking stock of that. So that was a process we went through prior, like pretty close to us going into the studio, and that thought process led us to writing the likes of For All That I've Won, which is the last song on the album,
Okay.
and probably the one that came probably the quickest, but was the last one to come. And that was born of thinking, we've got a little more to offer here than straight half-time pocket grooves and our standard sort of sweet talk operating procedures. But so that was a process where we were able to take a step back and figure out what else we wanted to add to the body of work.
Sorry, Dave, I wasn't sure if you were going to say
No,
something.
no. I mean, that's totally right. I think one of the things, Brian Weiss likes to have a go at us when we go on his station about how long we take to do things. And I think one of the things that we wanted to do with the first record is not rush it, and take our time, because it's like, who's waiting? We're doing this for us, actually, right? So we want to make the best record we can. And I think for us, it was important to show that kind of the depth of what we're into. And so we had like a really great live set, but once we kind of pulled it apart, as Soren was talking about just now, we're like, there's a couple of things we can do here that aren't maybe represented just yet. So I think you said, was it not hypnotic? What did you say?
Entrancing.
Entrancing. So okay, partly the consistency of the sound is because we did it all in one space in a short period of time, and we did it all live. So it's like, it's presented as a band. But the thing to create that, I guess, the engagement was about finding those things that weren't being represented. Like For All That I've Won is an acoustic track. It's just acoustic instruments and then the two brothers harmonizing. You know, we didn't have a straight ahead kind of rocker, so we kind of looked at some NRBQ as some inspiration on I'd Rather Be Alone. You know, just filling in some sounds that maybe we hadn't presented to fans before. So there's a little bit of that, you know, there's like our traditional live stuff, but then there's a few new ideas that we wanted to spice in there. So we feel like what we ended up, creating is a cohesive, engaging album from beginning to finish, you know? So
I would just love the fact that someone had a go at you about how long you take to do things. How long does art take? Like, that's like, this is
yeah, I mean,
is
it's
there a
expensive
standard?
to make too. Yeah. No, I mean,
I mean,
I
I think the timeline is different now that we've got our first proper body of work out there. But you know, the first one, we wanted to make it right, and I'm glad we took the time to do that.
You did have a 6-track, or around, I think it was 6-track EP that was out. You know, I'd rather be listening to Sweet Talk, which I notice is now on Bandcamp, but not on streaming services. I'm guessing you've taken it off streaming because you now have the album.
Yeah. So off that EP, so that first EP was only ever supposed to be a demo because no one would book us for shows. Nobody in Melbourne would book us because we had nothing online. So we're like, okay, we better make something. So we made that and we filmed it and we recorded live so that we could show people we could play. And so it was never supposed to come out. And then people are like, oh, you should get it out there. So we did. So those songs were always supposed to be recorded properly at some stage. So there's a couple on that first EP that we've put on the album, completely new recordings. So we thought, you know, and the label thought this as well. It's like, pull down the old one. So it's still available on vinyl. I have a few here actually. It's still available on vinyl, and there might be one CD left. Yeah, the album's really the first proper body of work that we're it's a line in the sand moment for us. You know, we've had a couple of singles in the past as well, Warm Love and Real Good Cooking, but the album's the first cohesive body of work that we intended to be a body of work, let's say.
And I also noted there is a bootleg situation called I'd Rather Be Listening to Bootlegs Volume 1. So I love that you put your own bootlegs out before anyone else had a chance to.
Yes, and that's probably something we will continue. So expect Volume 2 in the coming few months.
Yeah.
And I meant to ask Dave, when you were saying earlier about the length of set being 30 minutes, that's when you just get going. So does that mean if people come to see you live that they can expect that actually there's quite a bit of jamming that goes on, and the length of song that's recorded is not necessarily the length of song live?
It's more actually that we just play a lot of songs. Like, we've got a show now where we're super slick in the transition. So like in an hour set, we can play 15 tunes, you know, like 13 to 15 tunes, because we're just like, we've really cut down. The one thing that we really noticed touring with American bands is that there's just no BS. They just go, they hit the stage and running, and then there's just no kerfuffling around in between songs. And that's because people got an hour and a half or 2 hours to enjoy you, so they just like want to give you as much as they possibly can, and it really adds to a slick show. So we wanted to hold ourselves to that international standard, and a big part of that was getting our set super slick. So you know, there are moments of jamming, but mostly it's just our desire to play a bunch of songs, you know.
So this album, as you mentioned, was recorded all at once, and Robert Ellis was your producer. So what made him the right choice?
Well, it's a great, I think it was Dave, I struggle with this timeline, but it was early last year or the year before when we made that fateful.
Yeah, it was the end of 23. So it was December 23.
Yes, and we're on the road. We'd just finished a Sydney show actually, and we'd had just the right amount of fizzy waters back at the accommodation. Sort of just hanging out with the guys. One of us saw that Robert Ellis was on tour, and we were wondering how on earth we'd miss those dates or miss getting tickets to that run. But with that in mind, we just sort of thought we'd reach out and see if he had any time spare while he's on that particular tour. Turns out he did, and after some planning, Dave and I found ourselves at his apartment in Melbourne, doing some pre-production on the song called Crazy, or Have I Gone Effin' Crazy, which is one of the songs on the album. So we had a really great experience with him recording that song at the Avery. So yeah, the sort of the day after the pre-production session with him, or a couple of days later, we ended up in the room with the whole band and Robert at the Avery, and just for a day to see what were sort of results we could achieve together. And yeah, I think to say the least, we were very impressed and happy with the results from that experience. And then when we ran the numbers, it became apparent that we might be able to get Robert back over from the States to record the larger body of work. So once that became a possibility, we committed, and that's how we went.
And I think it's a perfect example of something I like to say is, which is, if you don't ask, you don't get. Never, because some people might go, oh no, he'd never be interested, and not even ask in the first place.
I don't think there's an industry that whether that's more truer than in the music industry. Yeah.
Well, that is interesting to know as well for anyone listening who's wondering about whether to send a DM or an email or not. Proof positive. So, did any of the songs you mentioned that you did some work on songs in the studio, but did any of them change, especially some of those older ones that were on the EP that you recorded for this album? Did they change in the recording?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Summertime Speakeasy, we wrote a bridge in the studio for, like, we wanted to cut the solos and just have a bit of a leaner rock rap tune, so we created a bridge for it. I think Backseat of My Car, Robert kind of drove that. Although that wasn't on the original EP, we'd been playing it a certain way for a long time, and Robert wanted to hear it a little bit more kind of like Jimmy Reed kind of, or Jerry Reed rather, a bit leaner kind of country tune. We worked on the songs a lot in pre-production with Robert as well. So things like Miller's Bay, which we retracked, we rewrote the first verse lyrics too. So a lot of stuff, a lot of little things where like I said, the first one was a demo, right? So even little lyrical things, like on that demo, we were writing lyrics as we were recording them. So there were little things we never had the opportunity to go back and fix, and that we always wanted to. So, we gave ourselves the opportunity to make the songs the best they could be. So, I mean, everything, Repo Man is a completely different song. Like, it's the whole groove of it's completely different. So I would say everything changed significantly.
Yeah. You have some fantastic backing vocals on this album as well. So who was responsible for those?
Both us and the two singers in Texas that Robert worked with, Roy and Spice, Uncle Roy and Spice. So we never met them, but Robert had an idea for a couple of things. So they're on Miller's Bay, they're on Backseat, Summertime, one other tune.
6 o'clock Swill.
6 o'clock Swill, that's right. Yeah. And apart from that, it's all us. So we still record all of our own harmonies, and we do big harmony sessions and things like that. So we had all that done, but at one stage, I think the harmonies we didn't get tracked while Robert was here, so he sort of took the files back to the States, added some Roy and Spice over there, and then we flew over the vocals that we hadn't managed to track over to him. So it's kind of a blending of both worlds, which was cool.
Yeah. Speaking of 6 o'clock Swill, you gentlemen are far too young to know what that phrase means. I would have thought, but clearly true. So what's the story behind the song?
Well, there's two stories here, and we get sort of pasted a little bit by some of the older blokes because some of the details in there are a bit anachronistic. But it was just conversations I had with my father and my father-in-law. They just talked about the 6 o'clock Swill, and it was just when you just hear a cool phrase and you write it down. It's just one of those ones. 6 o'clock Swill, that'd be a cool idea to write a song about. So we started writing a song around that idea, and I guess I didn't get quite enough detail about it because apparently on air the other day, again with Brian, I'd mentioned that there were people would drink 5 pints or whatever between 5:55 and 6 p.m. at night, but they didn't have pint glasses in Melbourne at the time apparently. So it was all 7-ounce glasses. But so the song's just like a kind of like a love tune. Like you go to a bar and you're drinking there and you meet somebody, and you're just hoping that those moments that you're sharing are genuine and that they're going to last, and that you'll see that person again, hopefully. So I mean, it's a fairly self-explanatory lyric sheet with just a tip of the hat to an old Australian cultural icon.
Yes, for anyone who's listening / watching who doesn't know what the 6 o'clock Swill is, at a certain point in Australian history, pubs closed at 6 p.m. and gentlemen would leave their jobs and run to the pub and line up the drinks and consume them before 6 p.m.
And then be forced to go home to their wives. Yeah.
Yeah. Completely, blasted, and I have seen a theory somewhere that suggests that that might be responsible for our binge drinking culture. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
that's where it started.
sure.
Now, another phrase that's the title of a song that I really liked was "Stoned in Texas, Queensland," and I'm wondering if it's based on personal experience, perhaps, for anyone in the band.
Well, that depends. There's definitely some personal experience woven in there, whether it was in Texas, Queensland or not. I don't think so, but I think some of the themes definitely have been experienced by some of the members of the band. But that was just that I was not aware that there was a place, or we weren't aware that there was a place called Texas in Queensland, and as soon as that sort of came on the radar, that was another sort of 6 o'clock swill moment where we just thought, oh, there's something in there that we're always trying to, we can be a genre bending band at times. There's a lot that goes into the tapestry, I think, that is Sweet Talk, but that was one where we wanted to embrace some rural areas of Queensland, or regional areas of Queensland and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought the subject matter was cool. I actually thought it was totally unique and original, but since then I've found out that many people have written about Texas, Queensland, Lee Kernahan included.
I suppose yes, because it does sound so odd saying Texas, Queensland. That
No one's written about being stoned in Texas, Queensland, though.
and it's the idea of trying to bridge the Australiana with the Americana. So, like, to me, that was the perfect encapsulation of that idea, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess that speaks to larger themes that we're always picking at, which is we want to write authentic music, authentic to our stories, right? And like we're not like, we don't call ourselves a country band. Other people say that, but like we're from the city, we're from cities, and so we're from Australia. So it's important for us to write about authentic things to us, and we're not going to write songs about America. But if we can be cheeky in the way that we kind of bridge that gap, it's cool, right? So
yeah. And I think the cheek does work. And Soren, you talked about the tapestry of Sweet Talk, and there are 6 members of the band. And I would imagine over the past few years of writing together, playing together, rehearsing together, that the colours of thread that go into that. But is there a bit of push and pull? Because obviously you're 6 individuals with different opinions. So do you find that the tapestry does change shape, sometimes not necessarily all in agreement?
Yeah, I think that's the nature of working with 6 people you respect. We're always open to ideas and everything. As much as Dave and I might have been the chief songwriters on this album, that might change for the second record, but we're always encouraging collaboration and that sort of thing. So yeah, the tapestry changed from song to song, I'd say. Certain members would feel like they had more to contribute to certain songs, which is always embraced. So yeah, hopefully that can be heard on the record.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is very much an album that sounds cohesive, yet it does have these individual stories in it, which are musically distinct, and lyrically distinct as well. And some of the songs are about the paradox of the musician's life. Is what I found. You're wanting to be with the crowd, wanting to be on the road, and then the consequences of that. And I think All That I've Won is, which you wrote in the studio, does address that directly. And except I can't imagine that being musicians is a choice for you, really. It's who you are.
100%.
We always say this, like, we would be doing this anyway, whether or not it had any kind of success, we'd be doing this for our and honestly, like, when we write songs, like we had a songwriting session a couple of days ago, Soren and I. When we write songs, we're just trying to impress ourselves. We just want to make ourselves happy with the music we're making. We never really set out for other people to like it, and it's kind of great that they do. So it's an imperative. I mean, like, even when we weren't in Sweet Talk, we were playing music all the time, so yeah, if you're a musician, it's a compulsion.
But I do also think my impression of the two of you working together in particular, after the last time I spoke to you as well, is that you hold each other to a high standard. So it's not a matter of, well, we know each other so well, we can just kind of relax and check out here. It's actually, the more we know each other, the more we work together, the more we want to impress each other with what we're doing.
But definitely, as much as we want to impress ourselves, I think, with me and you, Dave, we want to impress each other and keep challenging each other and raising the bar for one another. And yeah, just heading in an upward trajectory.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the best, we have a songwriting partnership in a kind of Lennon McCartney, Richards Jagger kind of model, and a part of that is, you know, if it doesn't pass our filter, both of our filter, then it's not good enough. So that's a mechanism we've built in to make sure that we're always aiming up. Because if I've got something and I feel like it's done, Soren's will always say, like, I think it needs a better chorus, I think it needs a better hook, and so we build those songs better, you know, and we end up with better quality music as a result of trying to push that, you know. Like sometimes we've actually caught ourselves and we're like, we don't have to try and write the best song of all time every single time, you know. Sometimes we can just write a fun banger, but yeah, we haven't really done that. We're always trying to hold ourselves to a pretty high standard. Yeah.
Which I actually think is not the norm, really, because it's harder. It takes more work. You have to, you know, really keep your scalpel sharp, as I like to say, and commit to doing that over the course of years.
Mm-hmm.
But then also your baseline is raised. So what other people might, you know, consider album fodder is, you know, if it's up here, it's a little bit more than album fodder.
Mm-hmm. I really love the sequence, for lack of a better term, at the end of the album, the three songs, I'd Rather Be Alone, and Have I Gone Fucking Crazy? Oh, I swore, so I have to put an E on the podcast. And into For All That I've Won. And in Effin' Crazy, there's a line about what it costs to be set free. And it did occur to me that I think all three of those songs kind of address that topic.
Yeah, like it's funny. I've never really thought about the lyrical blend between those, but certainly Have I Gone Crazy is based on the idea that at one point in our lives we were maybe not chasing the dream as hard as we should be. And it's like you're looking around and feeling like life's passing you by, and it's like, well, pick up that guitar and start playing some music, you know? And then I guess the next track is kind of like the duopoly of it, which is like, you know, we're now on the road, we're living that dream, and there's a cost to that as well, you know, and that's being away from your family or whatever it might be. Yeah, and I guess I'd rather be alone is probably kind of a little bit of part of that sort of psychological malaise as well, in that it's you know, maybe you can get a bit disconnected at times. But yeah, those are three songs that they're probably three of our latest arrangements. Certainly I'd Rather Be Alone and For All That I've Won were the last two songs written for the record, and Crazy was one, like, we had battened that one around for years. I mean, that had multiple different lives, and it wasn't until Robert came on board that we finalized it. But those three are probably, I don't know, for me they probably feel like the freshest three on the record, because they feel like the newest three, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I do like the fact that if you're playing the album on repeat and you go For All That I've Won at the end and then you go back to the start, it's going back to the start's actually the reminder of why you're doing what you're doing, if that makes sense.
Like that. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for me as a listener. Anyway, but so tours, I would imagine, with a six-piece band are interesting to organise, but you do have an album out, and so presumably you are looking at the rest of the year and where you can tour.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've as I said, well, we both said we've been on the road a little bit this year, which has been awesome. But the album is out and we are getting out on the road very shortly to support that. Mostly on the East Coast this time round. Can be logistically and financially prohibitive sometimes to get over to the West, but we'll be out there soon enough again. But yeah, so the album kicks off on the 25th of July, actually, at Winter Blues Festival in Echuca.
Yeah, to get across to the West, you probably need a really large combi van for six of you.
Yeah. Yeah, thankfully, Nick Simons, our drummer, is our TM, and I just it's probably worth a shout out to him, because he does a lot of the organization of the actual tour, you know, itineraries and bookings and stuff like that. And it's a tough gig, you know, with six of us. But yeah, we get there. Look, we often say, like, touring's the most fun we have, probably. You know, like, we actually all really do get along, and the van rides are hilarious. So it keeps you sane, just sane enough.
So even though some might think you've taken too long with this first album, I don't think that's the case. But you know, you have already started writing for the second one by the sound of it. So are you therefore thinking, okay, well, we're gonna book in some studio time, or will you just wait to see where the writing takes you first?
I think, yeah, ideally, we want to spend, you know, most of this winter writing the second record to then get in the studio over hopefully a Melbourne summer this time, because the winter is quite a force to reckon with creativity, we found. But yeah, so that's the plan. Hopefully that comes to fruition and we'll have something out of the second album next year.
I'd actually like to interrogate that statement, Soren. It's quite a force to be reckoned with in regards to creativity.
I find that, or just like the I don't know, it was a real battle coming. The studio we recorded at, it is known to have magic in the walls, but it's also known to have no heating. And it can be a real confronting moment when you start each morning there. But part of that is part of the challenge, and it's we produce. We're really happy with how it all sounded, so there must be something in the battle,
I think our problem is for whatever reason, we've always recorded in winter, and it's just like, it's cold, like let's write in winter, record in summer. That sounds good. Nice cruisy days in summer, long days, sun's up till 9 p.m. But yeah, if all things go well, we'll put out an album 12 months from now. So it'll be about 12 months between records. And we figured if we can do that for the first 2 to 3, maybe 4 records, then we build up enough head of steam,
Mm-hmm. I would also think cold is not great for instruments or voices.
No, it wreaks havoc on the tuning.
Yeah.
The only thing it's good for is keeping the beer cold.
Right.
Yeah.
But the good thing is you can put in a fridge and tour maybe summer months. Maybe it is just, you're the summertime band. I think it would actually, well, it would certainly fit with one of the songs on the album. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Think
And our vibe, our vibe is, we are kind of summery. But yeah, like for whatever reason, we've always recorded in winter. So this time we're not touring in winter. So it's like, let's do some writing. I mean, we probably have 5 or 6 tracks, more or less, that we could pitch for the record, from stuff that we've previously done with the band. There was multiple songs that didn't make this record, that we just put out. But we're writing some new stuff as well.
Well, those of the people who are listening / watching who would like to catch you before you're back into the studio can do so, and check out the dates on your socials and website, I'm sure. And then they can also switch on, pun intended, to the album. And hopefully I get to talk to the two of you again sometime soon. Thanks for your time.
Anytime, Sophie. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie. Cheers.